JMB Advising is a combination of like educational consulting, but counseling one-on-one. And so when you talk about services, you're talking about, well, what does it look like to plan out your high school career, your post-secondary career? Like, what things do you need to know in order to be able to do that?
What up, though, Black Fridays family? Welcome back to another installment of the Black Fridays podcast. Now, before we get into today's episode, make sure that you like, subscribe, and then also drop a comment on some previous videos as well. Now that we got that business out the way, we got family in the building. I want to introduce you all to Miss Jasmine Brooks of JMB Advising. How you doing today?
I am well. How are you? It's good to see you.
Likewise. And some of you may know, if you've been following the journey or paying attention at all, Jasmine did an Instagram live interview for me way back in 2020, it might have been 21, when Black Fridays, the inception, actually kicked off before it became a podcast platform. So it's very great to have you back. I think you may be like the second or third person from the Instagram live era to actually come and do a live interview.
I am honored. It is truly a privilege to be in the building. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So you are a leader in the educational space, been that way for some time, and you're doing that. So you do that in a different arena, but then as far as JMB Advising goes, being able to get these young folks prepared for what life looks like post high school, and then even beyond that, could you invite us into your world and then talk to us about JMB Advising, the services that you provide, and how did you get started with that?
I love how professionally my overlap has kind of built upon the foundation of me starting out as a classroom teacher, right? And coming out of Michigan, that was not something that I anticipated. It wasn't what I thought my professional career was going to be, but it just naturally flowed. And that transition to working in K-12 settings or as an education or educator period is really how JMB Advising began. And so I was in the midst of trying to figure out, like, I started teaching, but maybe I want to change like grade levels. Maybe I want to go into a different like setting or capacity within the school system, and was able to land this college success coordinator position, right? And that was the game changer, I think, for me as to how I saw and connected to students and families, and working directly with those students, trying to help build this college going culture in this high school setting, right? Like, what does that look like? Flags, pennants in the building. How do we get students to be excited about what post-secondary looks like? And that has even evolved over time, of me starting in 2012, right, to like where I am now of what post-secondary is deemed to be, and how that's communicated. But it started with one-on-ones with students, and JMB Advising then transformed into, let me help programs, after-school programs, out of school time partners, summer enrichment programs to build content and curriculum around college going cultures. Field trips, planning visits to campuses, like what do those things look like? Because that's what I was doing for my students every day, right? And that was the culture that we were, creating in the school. And so I was like, let me take this and create this business where I can then help students and families or organizations with being able to provide those services. So JMB Advising is a combination of like educational consulting, but counseling one-on-one. And so when you talk about services, you're talking about, well, what does it look like to plan out your high school career, your post-secondary career? Like, what things do you need to know in order to be able to do that? So we're talking about goal setting. We're talking about classes and courses that you should be taking. We're talking about scholarship research and finding those resources so that when you get to senior year, you already have an idea of like, I want to go to X school. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. So I need to be applying for these many scholarships on a monthly basis so that I can get in that ballpark of I can hit that target number, right? It's exploring, your hobbies and your passions, and how do you use those to then create a professional space for you once you graduate from high school, right? So it's all of the things that you feel like a counselor should be doing with our students in the classrooms, but I'm doing that with your family. So not just the one-on-one with the student, but the one-on-one with their parents, or I'm creating content for organizations so that they can give this playbook to their students that will help them to figure out how to make these choices, how to do this research, what are the vocabulary words that you need to know. So like a one-stop shop from a counselor teacher's perspective on how to get ready.
I love it. And if I would have had somebody like you when I was getting ready to go to college, I would have so much money. I'd be like an NIL student. I'd be up there, getting paid to go to school for sure. And I want to know from your experience and what you've seen so far, what are some of the things that you feel like our young folks are lacking when they get to you, or that may be kind of getting missed in translation? Because like I joked about the scholarship thing, but I didn't know a ton about applying for scholarships, sitting down, writing essays, seeking out scholarship opportunities and things like that. Thank God financial aid worked out the way that it did when it did for me when I went to school. But I didn't have a lot of that knowledge. So like, what are some of the things that our young folks might be missing nowadays?
I think what steps they're missing is just like there's a timeline, right? So like the choices that you make in ninth grade are things that set you up for your senior year because they build onto one another. So sometimes people look at each grade level as like an isolated like incident, like, oh, ninth grade was rocky, but like here I am 10th grade, I'm like doing all right, you know what I mean? Here comes 11th grade and it's like, oh, and then you look up and you're like, wow, I made these choices, or I made them without intentionality behind them, and now I'm looking at these are my options, or like this is what's left. And so I think a lot of it is just students having access to information of like there are different pathways that each one of you could be taking to get ready once you graduate from high school with what you're going to do moving forward. And that might be running your own business, but in order to do that, you got to be able to have some coursework or some common language that you understand when it comes to assets, business, revenue. Like there's still vocabulary that you need to know and understand. And so I think understanding and recognizing there's a timeline, there's like an order, like there's kind of procedure of like how life will begin to transition and shift for you impacts our students more than they recognize. And so then when they get to me and they're a senior and they have not yet maybe thought about a career field or a passion or a profession, they've just been going through school. They've been going every day because they have to. Like they got to go because if they're marked so many times absent, then they're truant. You know what I mean? Like versus like, I'm really passionate about biomedical engineering because such and such happened in my family and that's what made me want to do X, Y, Z, right? Like what is it that connects them to who they want to be later? That timeline starts the time that they get in the doors or in that seat in ninth grade. And so that's even preparation prior to that. But if I can only just get them in high school, I only have 4 years to be able to help them figure these things out before they get ready for this next step in life. Yeah. So that's what's been missing, I think.
For sure. So we're going to dig more into your expertise, but I got to introduce you to my favorite part of Black Fridays. Okay. You should remember this, Freestyle Fridays.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay.
So if y'all don't know this, but me and Jasmine went to college together, or y'all might remember, y'all might know. And Jasmine used to rap. She used to put out mixtapes.
No, I did not. You're lying. I used to dance, ballet, all the things.
She was ballroom instructor.
Yeah,
you have to go to Jasmine if you want to learn the ballrooms. So yeah, I need 16 bars though. So you're gonna have to rap for the good folks of Black Fridays.
Really?
No, you don't actually have to rap.
I'm not a rapper.
You don't actually have to rap. We just gonna do rapid fire questions.
Okay, okay, that's great.
We go, all right.
Cause me trying to no, it wasn't gonna happen, y'all.
So I gotta ask you, what do you feel like? And I might ask you this on the first. I don't remember. I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the most random job that you ever had? Did you work for Telefon?
I did work for Telefon. You at Michigan?
Yeah.
Most random job? I did.
You worked at Telefon?
I said ninth grade. Freshman year.
Telefon.
For sure, I was at Telefon.
So can you explain to the good people what Telefon is?
Oh, man. Telefon is like a room full of people on phones calling and asking for donations to the University of Michigan. And we had like different levels of calls that we had to make, different scripts that we had to follow, different like funding, like tiers of like put it in the LSNA fund or like towards the engineers or what have you. And we would be calling people, and they're supposed to be alumni, right? But like it wasn't always a pleasant conversation. We hated getting on phones, but telephone was paying. And you needed a job, you could get one at telephone. But everybody worked at telephone at some point.
I know, yeah. That was crazy. I heard telephone a couple of weeks ago, and I ain't heard that name in so long. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm like visualizing the space.
Being back in that space.
Yeah, like in working long hours, picking up extra shifts, just on the phone, calling people, asking them to donate money.
A couple dollars.
Yeah. Wow, that was a random job.
What was I about to say about the funny thing now is I think that those people call me, I hang up though. Man, I ain't gonna hold you.
That's unlikely. I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go ahead and just get the voicemail. I'm not picking it up.
It's just the Michigan student trying to pay their tuition and we hanging up on them.
Yeah. I'm sorry, y'all.
It is what it is. I'll donate another way.
Yeah, I do. I do. We tithe. So I'm definitely giving.
Come on now.
The random people I can't.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't do it.
For sure. So one of the things, before I even met you, so we've known each other for, I don't know how long now. It's been
a decade, I would say.
Yeah, at least a decade. Yeah. So even before I met you, it was a lot of people that you mentored or they considered you their big homie. So I'm curious as to who would you consider a mentor to you or people who have like poured into you, if you have a few names that kind of come to mind that you want to shout out.
Probably the very first person I would say that like poured into me on campus was Daniel Busby. And one of my best friends from high school, they were cousins. So like I had met her before, but like I didn't, know her well because we were about 2 years apart. But when I came as a freshman on campus, she immediately was like, you belong to me, and I'm going to help you. And she is the one who told me about my study abroad, GIEU, that program. She's the one who told me about it. Leaders and Best. Like, I remember her being a mentor in that. It was just a lot of like overlap. And then just who she is as a person and who she was to me when I was on campus. Like, she was just a big sister. Like, I could go to her. And this was even before Delta became something that like connected us. Like, she was like that with me, with like just being by myself. You know what I mean? Like, genuinely investing in like who I was and like opportunities for me and like connecting me to things. Like, so I would definitely say she's one of the people that from my time at Michigan, like had an impact on me, like inside and outside the classroom.
That's dope.
Yeah.
And if you had one,
Dr. Daniel Busby.
There you go. You get it right.
Very
get it
much
right.
Put some respect on her name. I know she would be like, "Oh my gosh, yes," but like, nah, she's a whole doctor.
For sure. For sure. And if you could talk to, let's say, 18-year-old JB, what would you say to her?
Ooh, man, I would say like dream big, right? Like, I think that there are things that I accomplished in undergrad that I'm really proud of. And I feel like my time there was well spent. I think that I was able to like leave impact and have my hands in different capacities on campus, like Red Staff and OAMI and like campus information center. I worked at the front desk. So like I was in different spaces. But I would say like you could dream even bigger than that, right? Like those are things that I didn't anticipate I was going to do. They were things that fell in my lap as I built relationships and like networked with people on campus. Like somebody told you should go work there. Somebody told you should go to that event. Somebody told you should go do that summer program, right? Or you should apply to that job. Like that's just like the nature of networking. But I would tell my 18-year-old self like to dream beyond what people pour into me, like do my own research and look up stuff on my own, and maybe have been a little bit more proactive. If I could change like one thing about undergrad, I probably would have studied abroad more or like started that like travel bug differently. Like it didn't hit me till sophomore year and I went to Ghana and that was great, but like I could have kept going.
Right.
And like maximize the scholarship dollars or the University of Michigan's funding dollars. I could have maximized that way more than what I did.
That's dope. Yeah. That's dope. Well, thank you for partaking in Freestyle Fridays once again.
Listen, had me shooketh. Okay. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have me on here rapping. It's gonna be awful.
Hey, you might have went crazy. You never know.
I can give you a 5, 6, 7, 8 like very easily, but spitting bars is not my ministry. Okay?
For sure. So Jasmine, in terms of the work that you do with JMB Advising, let's say I'm a student, I'm coming in with my family, we sit down with you for a consultation. How does your process go from there? Like what is a typical process which you look like from us walking into the door to us being able to get the services that we came to you for?
Okay. So typically, because sometimes I've had like emergency situations where we've like need to kind of escalate to like a quick phone call, and then it's like, okay, we need to like deliver some services ASAP. But a typical client that may come to me off of a referral, or like they emailed me, or they knew somebody that was like, you should reach out to Mrs. Brooks and talk to them. We would set up a 30-minute consultation. I would ask them questions so that I could kind of build a profile. So I want to know their academics. I would want to know their extracurriculars, what grade level they're in, what are their like goals and aspirations, things that they're affiliated with. So I can get an idea of like, where are going to be resources or places that I can tap into that maybe they're already connected with, or that I can kind of push onto them so that they see a different opportunity that maybe they're already familiar with. And so once we had that conversation and I'm able to build like what their profile is and like what it is they're coming to me for, then I create like a service package for them. And so in that, I'm going to list out potential sessions, so topics for each session. Every time we meet, based on how many times they want to meet within a service year or a school year, it's 30 minutes. So we'll have, a virtual call, because that just makes it easier. I can see them, so I can kind of inspect what I'm expecting of them to be doing. We'll go through our action items that we would have previously had, in a conversation, and then we're building upon the goals that we already know are set. So they have an agenda, they have tasks that they need to be completing, and then we're touching base like on a monthly basis of, how are we doing with that? What are we bringing to the table? What services do you need now? Maybe we've mastered something already, so we're moving on to the next goal. And so It's just that continuation until we get to the end of that service agreement for that year. Mm-hmm. And then we look back and we're like, okay, these are all the things we said we were going to accomplish. These are all the things that you were supposed to turn in. Did we hit our target?
Gotcha. And so all agreements are a year long and then customized to the student specifically?
Because it just makes sense for a student that you're working with them throughout the school year. Yeah. That can look different for each family or for each client based on what it is that they want to get out of it. So even though it may be for the 25-26 school year, maybe we only have 4 touch points within that year because they don't need as much support, but they want somebody to help hold them accountable. So they want quarterly meetings. Or they're like, no, they don't listen. They're not proactive. You have to stay on top of them. They need a session every month, every check-in. We need to be going XYZ. So that's why it's like really imperative that the parents are a part of that process initially, because they know their child best. So like, even though I'm asking the student questions, the parent are like, Mrs. Brooks, right? Yeah, he's not gonna do that. Yeah, he's a procrastinator, and then the student is just like, and I'm like, are you a procrastinator? And they're like, I am. Yeah. So it's like, I'm like, well, this is not to like make you feel bad about that, right? Like we got to own the things that make us special, right? Our strengths and weaknesses are what build who we are. So if you know that like, if I tell you to do this, you're not going to do it, then I need you to put sticky notes up on your mirror. I need you to sit down and put these reminders in your phone before we get off the call. I need to know that they're in there so that as they start going off, you can think of me going off. Like, hey, did you do X, Y, Z? You know what I mean? And so it just depends. And so that's why those consultations are so important, because it gives me background information on the client before we build a package. And then they're all customized to each person. Yeah. So whatever time frame you need, however many sessions you feel like you need, whatever resources you feel like you need. And then, we just go, then they get a folder built for them in my drive, and then all their materials go in there.
You do packages for adults? Because I might need to come see you.
I've worked with some adults too. I'm actually working with an adult that is, and I won't like tell all the business because this is like in the process, right? But like, trying to build a curriculum for a program that he would like to teach is now kind of developing into like a book. And so that's really, really cool for the client. And so I'm like, okay, the next step is we're going to meet with somebody who is in a school setting that already has a contract, so we can get an idea of like, what was that process? How did that work? What did they have to do? You know what I mean? Because as you're developing this resource or this tool, you want to know how can you best market that, right? So like, that was an adult, but this was also someone that I knew that was like, hey, would you work with me on this? And I'm like, absolutely. So I do packages for adults too.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Love to hear it. So do you have like a criteria that your clients would need to meet in terms of when they come to you, or just like a running list of things that they would need to, that you would kind of go down or expect out of the typical customer that you work with, or typical family, I should say, that you would work with?
My typical families are high school age students or college students. Sometimes I get graduate level that are like, I'm trying to apply for a program. I need some assistance with like my essays. Maybe I've been out of school, so I'm just trying to like get my bearings together and kind of put together a package. You don't have to have a bunch of knowledge about college access, college success to be able to connect with me, right? My job is to bring those, resources, those tools, that information to you so that it makes sense, right? These are the steps that you take. This is kind of the timeline. This is the process. Some of my families come with, little or no education, like in the family household. Some of them are very well educated and they're like, I just don't have the time. Yeah. So it's a myriad of differences between one household to the next. And I think that because I have the educator's background, I'm equipped to handle them all. It's like open enrollment, right? Like new students come to a school and they have all different kinds of kids or grades or age levels of students that they have in their household. And you got to figure out, well, how does my school meet those needs? That's kind of how I look at JMB Advising, right? I have different packages for different age levels. I have different services that are provided for different people for different reasons, but it's a catalog of things that you could choose from that would then help you with making your post-secondary goals, set them, implement them, and execute them.
Fire. So can you take me to, so I didn't know that you were in the classroom beforehand. So what was that like for you being a teacher? And then how did that kind of translate to the work that you do now? Like, is it complementary or are they like two completely
No, it's
different
complementary.
Okay.
I think about that very first teaching experience. I was at Fisher Magnet Lower Academy. Shout out to all of the vet teachers that were there that like poured into me, as Mrs. Holly, Miss Posley, like Miss Fati, like the whole staff just welcomed me, right? And Miss Tolles, like it was just, they were just this group of educators that like loved what they did. And here I am, this fresh face right out of college, like, training is from the summer, you know what I mean? Like education wasn't my like declared major. So it was really me going in off the strength of like, I'm smart enough to be able to figure out a plan, have a game plan. I know what it felt like when someone taught me, like I'm now becoming this teacher that I think, or I'm striving to be this great teacher. So I took it very seriously. I knew I was young. And I didn't want parents to assume that I didn't know anything. You know what I mean? So I was very business. I carried that over into, I think, how I interact with youth now. Like I'm still very much like, my name is Mrs. Brooks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, cause that's just how I grew up, referencing adults in adult spaces that like I regarded as someone who was helping or supporting me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think the lessons that I learned in the classroom as a teacher and the challenges that I went through and like how to create a lesson plan and like how to unpack this content to help somebody else be able to like be invested in it and like learn from it, like carried into working with high school. Like it was an easy transition because I really enjoyed it, but it was newfound territory because these were bigger kids, you know what I mean? And then you realize high school kids are just like babies, like any age category. Like there are things that make them soft. There are things about them that are like, they have a lot of tenacity and like, they have a lot of questions, but it's the same on all levels. It's just a different demographic. Yeah.
And when did you make the decision to move out of the classroom? What was that like for you?
So it's an interesting story. I'm gonna drop it here on the podcast.
Okay,
right?
We like exclusives.
I was actually pregnant with Jackson, my youngest son, and had a student that had a really interesting like home dynamic, just a lot of stuff going on. And I remember I like redirected him in the classroom. I was like, hey, this isn't working for you. This space isn't really helping you to like stay on task and like be focused. I'm gonna move your seat. And like that was like a big deal for him. Like he was not interested in moving his seat. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to make this change very easy, real quick, like not a lot of attention to it. Like, cause I just know that if I can shift him into a different space in the classroom, like it'll help him, right? But he just was not into it. So he got really upset. And I remember he pushed me like while I'm pregnant with my unborn child, like in my stomach. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is this is a lot, right? Like, so if I'm gonna,
so you didn't do one of those.
I didn't.
Okay,
I thought, God's grace touched that baby and like the hands of the angel, because I was just like, you know what I mean? My maternal instinct has went off, and I'm not even officially a mom yet, right? But like, we can't do this. So I'm like, maybe I need to get out of working with the littles. And like, that's such an isolated incident, but the way I think I responded to it was just like, maybe I need a older age group, right? Like maybe the demographic that I need to be serving isn't this young, right? And so time I switched over to high school and started working with them, I was in my space. Like, I was very much in my lane. I can handle kids of all ages because I think that I just love being an educator. So I know I have to bring it down to their level or like have a different kind of conversation. But when I started working with high school, like that was the game changer for me of like, this is what I was supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be working with youth. I'm supposed to be connecting with them. I'm supposed to be listening to their dreams and aspirations. Like, this is what I'm meant to do, right? And that wasn't something that I knew walking in the classroom to teach first grade initially, but it's what I know happened over time.
Got you. Because I was going to ask, did you know that you wanted to work with young folks, or were you working with young folks? Actually, no, I know that you were, but did you find fulfillment in working with young folks prior to you getting your first teaching gig and actually going to the classroom, or was that something that kind of grew over time?
So it had been following me, like mentorship, teaching, educating. I used to coach competitive cheer with Think Detroit PAL. I was with the Detroit Broncos. And I had the C team, so that was 8 to 10. So that's, a little bit older than the first graders that I initially was teaching. And that was kind of like my sweet spot with that age group too. But then going to Michigan, I I was a facilitator for Gear Up. I did Summer Bridge. So it was like at every level that I was matriculating, I was still working with youth that were either younger than me or like near peer. And those experiences were helping shift and shape my leadership. And I didn't even notice it until it was time to like declare a major and figure out, well, what am I going to do? And it's like, you're an educator. Like, this is really what you do. So it again started, the seed was planted before I knew it. But then it also attributes to like both my grandmothers were educators. They were both Detroit public school teachers, 30 plus years. Like, so that was in my system. Like, I knew that that's what they did, but I never equated that to it being what I was going to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was just like, oh, okay, this fit me.
Yeah, definitely. And I can tell, I know that you're in your bag in terms of the work that you do now, because we've had an opportunity to work together with some young folks in terms of the collab and some programming that we were able to do. And you did a phenomenal job in terms of working with our young students, especially when we had a group of young ladies and helping them kind of navigate and figure out what their life is going to look like post high school, and then how do you get prepared for those type of things. So I was going to ask you in that essence, how do you I guess kind of get fulfillment or understanding of the impact that you have on the young people that you work with from the lens of helping shape their futures and help them see what is the possible for them as they get ready to matriculate into like that young adulthood?
I think when I'm in the moment, I'm genuinely giving them advice that I think would have been helpful if I were sitting in their shoes. So it's either from my lived experience or it's something that I know to be true from like factual things that have happened to people around me. But I don't know that in those moments I'm doing it with the recognition that like I'm like paying it forward, right? It's when they give me feedback that it becomes a reality that like what I said stuck. Or like what I did made a difference, or like things that they remember that I don't remember that I did, because in this, season of mid-30s and up, like you start forgetting things, and I have to write lists and like action items and like goals, but like people's memories sit with them, you know what I mean? And so I think when I read comments from my students, or like they'll shoot me a text, or, on my birthday, you know what I mean? Like they always come out of the woodworks, and they always come out and they always say things that trigger memories for me with them. And so I think for me, that's probably the most fulfilling aspect of it. Is like, I don't do it for a pat on the back or an award or recognition. Like I do it because I genuinely want to see them be great people. It just is a blessing along the way for them to tell me that that it mattered, that what I did or how I treated them or how I told them to look at life in a particular way or what have you, like actually made a difference. And that is what I think drives the work that I do professionally. It's what drives my business. It's like what drives me as a person to know that I have this ability to like meet students and have them impact my life and also reciprocate that for them.
Yeah.
Because I'm genuinely like excited about like what they're getting ready to do.
Have you had any young folks that's like impacted you in a way that you didn't necessarily see fit, or any, I guess I should ask, does any memory come to mind in terms of how a young person has impacted you?
I have a lot of great stories, I think, because I've had so many classes of kids. But I'll say one in particular, her name's Mahaja. She was one of my former students. She just had a lot of stuff that happened over the time in which we first like got to know each other as like administrator to student. She lost her stepdad at one point. I lost my grandmother. Kind of in that process, she was navigating like a HBCU and like how to navigate being away from home, but like still being directly connected to her siblings and her mom. Like they were very close. And so I'll never forget Mahaja made, she had this like glass cube with a picture of my grandmother on it, and it lights up and it has different settings, and she, you know, gave it to me as a gift. And I was very close with my grandparents. So like when my grandmother died, it was a little after my grandfather died. So like that was, you know, a difficult space for me to navigate. And I don't think my grandmother's funeral was out of state. So like nobody was there, like outside of like my immediate family. But she like took the time to like order me this gift. You know what I mean? And it, you know, sat on my desk. I still have it. When I get whatever my new office space will be, it'll go up in there. But like, that was not something that I asked her to do, but it was something that she did because of the relationship that we had. Like I've been to viewings for, you know, people in our family. Like, you know, you just show up for people the way you want them to show up for them. And that's just like an example of how a student just made me feel appreciated and like seen, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm sure she'll watch this because she keeps up with a lot of the stuff that I do, and she's like, you gonna tell them that story? But like, yeah, you know what I mean? Because that was just, it doesn't take a lot to be thoughtful and considerate, I think. And that was just, it's a core memory for me that I'll always associate like with her, was like, she saw me in a time where I'm sad, you know what I mean? But I'm coming to work, I'm doing my job, I'm still giving my all to my babies. But like, she was like, this is for you. And like that really meant something to me.
For sure. And I love that story. And I love how it also shows that community aspect of what it is that you do. So being able to not only work with these students for whatever period of time that you have them, but being able to be connected with them throughout life, because I'm sure it's interesting and one thing to see them go through adolescence, but then to see them now become adults and kind of navigate.
They have kids, they're getting married. You know what I mean? Like I just, like even my student Jalen, like I just went out to San Francisco to visit and watch him play. He's on the 49ers. Super excited for him, hang out with his family. And then he turns around and picks my job as my cause for my cleats campaign. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and his fiance told me that he was doing it, but it was just different to like see it like up close and personal. You know what I mean? To see like the DCAN logo on the cleats. Like it was just, it's overwhelming because you think about, you've watched these students grow from like kids to adults, and like, you know what I mean? He has a beautiful family, and it's just like, people don't have to be kind, and they don't have to make things that are important to you important to them. You know what I mean? So it's just like, there's so many moments like that aren't in the spotlight of my students and stuff that they've done, but it's just like, that's a moment where I can like, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm very proud, like that is a relationship that I've been able to have over time because of things that were done while I was in the classroom.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. How do you how have you been able to blend the worlds of what it is that you do from an entrepreneurial business standpoint and then what it is that you do for work? And I know that they obviously overlap from the standpoint of education, but I mean, I'm sure there's different skill sets in terms of running your own thing and then, what you do for another organization by day. So I was wondering, how do you kind of blend those two worlds?
I recognize that there are spaces where they have to remain separate, and that's fine. There are spaces where it is beneficial that they do overlap, because maybe a student is someone that then comes to DCAN for services or support or what have you. Like, I think it is the balance of like me being who I am. Like, I'm just authentic. I'm very transparent. Like, we're not going to keep secrets about what's happening that's going well at work or what's happening that's going well in my business, because those things equally impact me. And so I feel like my team recognizes that, my coworkers or like our staff, like they know if you give me a task or you give me a project or there's an initiative of some sort, I'm going to show up to the table and I'm going to give the very best version of whatever it is that I have to offer, right? Because I know that that helps bring impact to us as a team, right? And so the same, I think I try to apply that mindset to my business. Like, I want my clients and their families to know that when I'm showing up for them, I'm showing up for them in the same way that I would show up if it was me and my sons, right? If I was doing something for my kids, this is how I would approach it. This is how I would invest my time. This is how I would spend my money, right? So I want that to be the same level of like care and priority and maintenance, right? And so I think it's helpful that I had the background that I had before I got into my professional space that I'm in now, because it prepared me and equipped me that I was running my own business. So I know what that feels like, but that I was, in education, like as an actual like administrator or teacher, those things just help to cultivate and craft the decisions that I make now, like in a director's seat or, position where I'm making decisions that impact a staff or impact the students and families that we work with. Like, it all kind of comes together. So I think that it's been helpful. But I didn't know that these things would transpire the way that they did to get me to where I'm at right now.
Got you. And you mentioned earlier in terms of you work with not only students, but you work with their families as well from JMB Advising standpoint. How do you deal with the parent aspect of it? Because I know that can be a delicate balance, just in terms of like the nonprofit that we work in terms of the collab and like dealing with parents and working with some parents. And it's not always the easiest thing to do or to balance. So I'm wondering, like, how does Jasmine deal with it?
Well, for JMB Advising, I love my parents, honestly. I think that when I get clients that come to me, whether it's a referral or it's the parent that like maybe we interacted at an event or we met somewhere and they were like, I really need some help. Like, I don't have the time to dedicate this schedule to my student, but I care about them. So I want to invest in it and I want you to be the person that runs it. However they come to me, when they come to me, they are invested in their child. So they are ready to be on the one-on-one calls. They want the recaps of like the sessions that we've had. I put them in text threads. So like everybody is on the same page. Everybody knows what's going on, because we give our kids a level of like autonomy. But like when it comes to like, can you afford to go to college? Like, that's not necessarily a decision that we just want sitting in their hands with no conversation.
2
like,
months before you got to go to school.
I trust that they've been doing what they're supposed to do. And then you get to April and decision month is in May. And it's like, did you get any scholarships for school?
No.
What scholarships? I didn't apply for those. Like, you did what? So I think dealing with my parents is always easy. Like, even the ones who are maybe more invested than others. I have some that are very hands off. Like, I just want to pay for the service. You take it from there. You let me know what you need. If they're not responsive, let me know so I can step in. But like, for the most part, it's collaborative. So I let them know, like, the work is done between you and I. Your parents are either paying for my time, like the services, the resources that I'm adding to the table or providing or what have you, but like the work is not for them to, they've already gone to school or not, right? Like, this is not their journey, is yours. So like, you have to be invested and meet me halfway. So I honestly have never really had like crazy trauma or like issues or drama with parents in my educational career. Like, I've had parents that have challenged me. I've had parents that have been upset about specific things.
Right.
But like as a parent, I get it. Like when things are not explained to you or you don't understand what's going on, like you go into defense. Like you ready to do whatever, to say whatever when it comes to your kids. So it's just like you have to respond and handle them with care. You know what I mean? Because sometimes they're just walking into situations blindly, and that is what sets up the defense, right? Like they just like, I don't know what's going on. So they're just automatically like ready to go.
Right.
But I feel like I've always been able to establish good rapport with my parents. And so I think that works in my favor because I'm like, listen, I have kids just like you. Even if I didn't have kids, I would treat your kids like they were my kids.
Right.
So that works in my favor.
Got you.
Yeah.
And then, so on the scale of 1 to 10, how accurate is Abbott Elementary when it comes to some of these things?
We literally just watched the episode about Christmas Eve today.
Yep.
I love Abbott. It reminds me of being in Institute when I was first teaching, and I did a summer program at Temple University. It's the vibe, like it's the way teachers dress. It's the workroom etiquette. It's the lunch breaks. Like it is so accurate. Like I truly enjoy. Like I be cracking up watching Abbott, and sometimes my husband will, because we watch it together. He won't necessarily laugh because it's like a teacher joke. You know what I mean? Like he thinks it's funny too, but I'm like invested. I'm like, we gotta watch the new Abbott. So it's one of my favorite shows for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of the resources that you bring to your students and helping them get to university, college, and beyond, how do you kind of build rapport with, or do you build rapport with some of these schools, or like maybe if there's resources that they need? I know you provide this, but I'm just using it for example, like essay writing or something like that, of that nature. How do you kind of like help? How do you bridge the gap for these resources to come together?
So a lot of it is the networking piece, right? So when I was at my former school, we had an SAT prep class that was taught by a company called Exam Experts. And I got a chance to meet with, their, CEO and see his business and watch how they interact with students. And so from that relationship, that partnership, now mind you, this was his business and I'm at school at work, right? But like connecting, having conversation, I'm telling him about like my business and what I'm doing. He would then invite me to come and participate in programming. Like, hey, I need you to come and facilitate like a scholarship session for my students. That's in your wheelhouse. Like that's your lane. Like I need you to come and do that on this Saturday at this month at this time. Perfect. So now I'm building up, additional clients or families because I'm sitting in on those services. So now when my clients are coming to me and they're like, hey, I need some SAT prep, I'm reaching out to Dr. Mayberry like, hey, I've got these juniors or I've got these seniors that, need to take the SAT over or they're prepping for it. Can I get them in like a special class? So he's like, yep, I'll do a special rate just for your clients. They're going to do X, Y, Z. So we just did the pilot of that this fall.
Nice.
And one of the clients, she already had like a good SAT score, but good is relative to the person, right? In her eyes, she was like, this is not enough. I need to go higher. She grew 200 points from SAT boot camp with him for 6 weeks. That was something that I connected them to as my clients. I'm like, I'm not going to teach the class. Dr. Mayberry is going to teach. His team is going to teach it. They're going to provide you with the resources. And we're going to see how this pilot goes so that I know if this is something that's going to be beneficial to future clients. And so, like, of course, we're still aggregating the data. I need to find out from all of them, which we'll be doing in our one-on-ones in December. So if y'all are watching this, just so y'all know, we're going to be talking about where their scores were and what they did, what steps they took to actually be invested in the SAT prep that they were receiving. Because if you're going to pay for something, you want to see it come to fruition. You want to get your money's worth, right?
Of course.
So I'm like, you got to meet us halfway to do the things for you to receive those benefits. And like, when she told me that, I was like, I'm immensely proud of you. Like, I know that was time, you know what I mean? That's Sundays that you're taking an hour and a half out of your time to go through this additional study prep, but like it worked. So now as the acceptances are coming in, I'm like, we should be getting some more institutional dollars because your score went up. And so those are ways in which I'm like helping to build upon my services with other people to pay it forward, to bring other spaces in that, can do things that maybe I can't, right? Because if I can't answer the question or I don't have the answer to the question, I'm going to find it. right? Or I'm going to connect you with somebody who does know the answer because that's a part of the service.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so let's say there's a family out there or some young people who could utilize your services. Let's say they're not quite ready to come to you for whatever reason. It could be financial, it just could be logistics, whatever the case may be. What are some things that families, parents, students, should they be listening to this, should be considering in terms of getting their young people prepared for what that next step is going to be in terms of college readiness? So before we started recording, we talked about like the difference between how juniors prep, how seniors prep. What should they be doing like now if they have young people that's within that range to get them ready for school?
Honestly, this is an exploratory phase right now in high school. You should be exploring extracurriculars, activities, things that are outside of your comfort zone. Participating in programs gives you an idea of like what you don't like, what you do like. It also helps you to learn how to work in groups. So I would say that my encouragement to even just middle school too, like we're doing this with our youngest. We put him in robotics, right? Like he's never done robotics before. It's a coding class with code 313.
Yep.
And he loves it, right? And it's 3rd through 8th grade. He's in the 5th grade. So like if that's something that he wants to continue with through middle school, we're going to support that, right? But that's all we're exploring right now. We're trying to figure out like what things is he going to be good at? Is this going to help lead him to a profession? He already sits on the iPad all the time. He's great with the game. He loves the PS5. So I'm saying those things to parents that I'm interacting with because I'm doing it too. Right? I'm trying to figure out what's going to be the best fit decisions for my kids. And so them being at home all the time isn't good for them. They've got to get outside. They've got to do something, right? And so it doesn't mean that they have to be signed up for everything because that's time, that's money. Like it could be a myriad of things in a household that will restrict a student or a parent from being like overly involved. But if it's something that they can do that's right in their school, where it's like literally go from like the school day to like, the program, and then you can get picked up after that, do it. Like, don't just let them come home and that's all that they do, right? So even if it's just one activity, them picking something that they can connect with or identify with, there's so many organizations in the city of Detroit that are great. Mosaic, Midnight Golf, like the Connection, like there are all these different organizations that do this work. Let your child be involved in something. Test it out, see if you like it. You know what I mean? You never know how it will impact them towards a career path or a passion or a hobby that then becomes who they are in the future. So
that's fire. How soon is too soon to have the money conversation in terms of like scholarships and stuff like that?
It's never too soon.
Okay.
I mean, I think there are kids who are like, I want to be a cardiologist. And if you want to be a cardiologist, you're going to be in school forever, right? You're going to be in school for a while. So you need to recognize that, like, let's find some programs that are dual programs. Let's get some dual enrollment under our belt. Let's get some credits. But there are kids who have no idea, and that's okay too, right? I did not know that I was going to be an educator. I had no idea. It just wasn't, that was not what I was walking around telling people. I was saying, I'm undeclared, I'm undecided. I actually don't know what I want to do. I'm going to be great at it. Like, I'm going to be successful. My grades are great, but like the direction, I just wasn't sure, right? So it takes some of us some time to figure that out. But had I not had all of those extracurricular things that were like pouring into me and building me up with leadership and skill sets, when I did figure out what I wanted to do, I wouldn't have known what to do with my talent. Right? So I think it's never too early to start talking about money, because I think if kids were to understand the value of $1 much sooner than later, it would help them to understand and put it into perspective, like these things are going to cost us money. You, your parents, your village, somebody is going to have to pay for something. So like if we're going to invest our time, we're going to invest our money, let's make sure we have conversations as a family unit about what that looks like.
I love it. That's fire. That's especially the extracurricular piece of it, because for me, I don't think I got into extracurriculars until maybe like my sophomore year. I kind of sort of joined BPA, but like at the end of the season, so I didn't get a chance to do any of the activities. But then I joined Midnight Golf my junior year, and then that was kind of like, and I would continue to be a part of BPA. So like those were my things that I got a chance to do that were extracurricular. But like I could have easily just fell to the wayside because I was going home and chilling otherwise. So
and like you had your little crew of people you were cool with from
Right.
school, but like what was the avenue that, or the places and spaces that you then got to hang out with them outside of school?
Exactly.
Like doing anything productive, or like challenging yourself, or maybe traveling, like something where it's like being paid for or funded. You know, even student athletes, like they are living life on a schedule. There's discipline, there's routine. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you want them to be exposed to something, even if it's entrepreneurship in nature. Like if you run your own business, hire your kids to be your employees. Like give them tasks. Like I just did a one-on-one with one of my students from over in Pathways. I was an instructor, and this young man he's in high school. He's in Grand Rapids, and he's telling me how his mom has a business. He runs the training for the employees. He has certain days where he's in schedule. He runs the scheduling. He knows that the holiday season is coming up, so there'll be like hours that are blocked off where he's going to do that, but he does dual enrollment in the evenings, and he's just rattling off this schedule to me, and he's like, and I have my own app, so like I'm getting ready to like launch that, but then I have 2 other businesses that I want to do, and I'm like, you are impressive.
Yeah.
Like, and you're in high school, like you're a junior, and like what you're talking about is how adults are trying to figure out how to balance and manage their time. I was like, and you have a vision for what it is that you want to do. I was like, you got to own it. Like, yes, we want your grades to be tight, but you're living experiences that are going to help you to figure out like who you want to become as a young man. And he was like, I didn't think about it like that. And I'm like, so like these kids are doing amazing things, but they also have to be encouraged to do that. Right. So, you know, nothing should be off limits as far as like, let's explore. And that can be within their wheelhouse, within whatever works best for the household. But I highly implore for them to do something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not necessarily what you want them to do, but right? But like something, and find out what their interest is and go from there.
For sure. And so what do you see in the crystal ball for Jasmine, for JMB Advising? What's on the horizon? What's next? You got anything big that you're working on that you might be able to share with us? Let us know what you see for the future.
I have some awesome projects going on at work that I'm really, really excited about, that I think are a part of like the vision. If I had to like look into the future of like how programming and planning should look, like I'm in those stages of like that creation phase. I think so I'm excited about that. I think for JMB Advising, I'm excited to see this cohort that I have that are seniors. Because I really want to see if they can rise to the occasion when it comes to these scholarships. I've had some clients win some big ones in the past, but I feel like it should be more consistent. Like they all should be winning, you know, $25,000 scholarships, $50,000 scholarships, like full rides to go to these schools of their dreams. And I really want to help them accomplish that. So I think for me, like this cohort is, it's a heavy focus because I really want to see them win. And I know that when that happens, it just opens up the door for more students behind them to win too. Because when you see somebody that looks like you come from where you come from win money like that to go to school, it's like, well, if he could do it, if she could do it, if they could do it, like I can do it too. You know what I mean? And I want it to be that ripple effect where more students are like, I just have to take the time and prioritize applying for these programs or applying for these opportunities, and then watching how that manifests into like my future. And so I would say that those projects for work, this cohort that I have right now of seniors that are like getting ready for all of those milestones. And then also just like figuring out like what programming do I want to tackle next, right? So I've built curriculum or content for, you know, different organizations in the city, different out-of-time school partners. And so I think the next thing is like, what curriculum can I create or build that's going to make it easier for an organization to have a college-going culture that they may not be equipped to do otherwise, and figure out like who that is, what they need, and just get creative, because I love being able to like solve a problem when it comes to that space of like, what is it? How are the kids going to resonate with this? How do we create a beginning, middle, and end for them? What's the storyline that they will then identify with when it comes to like college and career access and like persistence? So I think that's like my next like big goal is like, let's build another curriculum for someone and see how that goes.
Love it. And you mentioned you got a group of seniors currently, so you're gonna
They're from all over.
So you're gonna need another crop of students to come in next time. So if people are, or next year, if people are interested, if they listen to this and they're like, I gotta have my kids work with her and go to JMB Advising, how can they get in touch with you? What's your website? What's your social media handles? All that good stuff.
So yeah, I mean, 9th, 10th, 11th, even college students that are like, hey, I just need some more support. I need someone to help coach me. I need some guidance along the way. But I also need somebody to like help me craft these essays, these award-winning, scholarship-winning essays, right?
Yeah.
My website is www.jmbadvising.org. You can go on there and kind of peruse around, and it will give you a form where you can fill out an inquiry and say, hey, you'd like to schedule a consultation with me, so we can sit down and figure out like what services will really be best for you. I'm also on Instagram at JMB Advising. You can check out, my reels, just different content of things that I've been working on and doing both professionally for my day-to-day job, and then for JMB Advising with my clients and just projects and initiatives that I've been doing with that. And then my email is jbrooks@jmbadvising.org. So you can send me an email if you're interested and you're like, hey, I watched the podcast and, I'm really trying to figure out like, where do I go from here? Like, what are my next steps? But it would be for us to have a consultation and then just kind of go from there. So I feel like I've been in this situation as a parent because I have a college age student. So I remember what that felt like, trying to help navigate that with him and figure out like what resources do we utilize. It's more difficult when it's your child because you're the parent, and like, our kids love us and I think they admire us and respect us to a certain degree, but they also think we don't know anything for real. We didn't think our parents knew anything. So it's different when you're working with my clients because they're like, I trust your opinion. I know you know what's best. And so it's more of like a learning experience when it's within your family members too, right? Cousins, nieces, whatever. It's like, hey, Auntie Jasmine, can you help me with XYZ? And I'm like, yeah, but you got to do the work. And then it's like, crickets. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, I'm not going to do it for you. You also have to want to do it, you know what I mean? And then be ready to like meet me halfway. So it's still a process for anybody. But I think that it's a process that's worth the time because we really create space and opportunity for students to like grow and develop with these skill sets of like, let me figure out how to navigate my future. And so I think I do it well. It's a passion. It's a privilege. Like, it excites me to do a consultation and be like, I'm getting ready to work with this new family. Like, we're about to do some things. You know what I mean? So I'm excited about what's to come. And if I can impact one student, right, like that's enough for me, but I'd like to go bigger and beyond that.
Love that. That's dope. Well, Jasmine, I appreciate you for pulling up to the podcast once again, even though it's like 4 years later, but
this was right on time. It was right on time.
It was right on time. Exactly. Definitely right on time. But grateful for the work you do with our young folks and caring about them and getting them to the next level and beyond and being invested in their lives. So definitely appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me in this space and this platform, this setting. I keep following you, and I keep seeing the amazing things that are happening for you with this. So I'm honored to be a part of it, and I wish you even more success with the next guest that comes. So,
appreciate that. So everybody watching, make sure that you check out previous videos. Go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.